Hey, welcome back to the Empire of Dirt, where if we don't got it, you don't need it. Today we're going over Block Prep 101, and I got a little overhead surprise, maybe to help illuminate what I'm doing. But we are here and we're going to discuss proper block prep. And really, we're going to assume that you start with a junkyard engine, unknown origin, like I did with this one. Now, I've already covered a bunch of bases on this before I went too far to make sure it was good. But the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure your cylinders here are actually usable. Because if they're not usable, then we don't want to go too far. We want to get them to a usable state, which might mean a trip to the machine shop, get them bored out. And in this case, on my 6-liter, I was lucky. All she needed was a hone job, which, hey, I'm happy for. But there's a few other things we want to make sure of, too, before we go too far. Especially these LS engines. Now, probably notice our head bolts are complete blind holes, and they're pretty deep. So there's one thing we want to do right off the bat. We want to take a tap, and in this case, this is just a cheap Amazon tap because the ARP one was too expensive for my taste. And I will try to provide a link in the description for this if you're curious. But you want to take that, stick it down in your hole, and you want to clean out threads. And this is actually kind of important because you want to make sure that's good to begin with. Because if these threads ain't good to begin with, then once again, you got issues, and probably better off just to get another block at that point. But assuming you cleaned out all the holes, one common problem, especially if somebody replaces head gaskets in these, is they tend to blow out the head gasket bolts. And lucky for us, it's a quick test. All you need is some compressed air, and you're going to need a blowgun like this with a rubber tip. And all you're going to do, you're going to stick this down in the hole. You want to see if it holds pressure. If you can hold pressure in that hole, it's good. And if you're not sure, get a bottle of soapy water and spray around there, especially in the coolant passages, because you want to make sure that hole didn't get blown out. And repeat the test and look for bubbles, especially around these coolant passages. I'm going to actually rotate this quick, try to give you a better view in the overhead, which, sorry if I'm making this a little fast-paced off the bat. There's just a lot to cover, and I want to make sure I get everything nice and good, because we're going over block prep, whether you're stock or going for wild performance. But hopefully you can see that good. You want to make sure you're looking around these coolant passages, and that's the main spot you want to spray with your soapy water. And that's only if you're unsure if it's actually holding pressure. Maybe you can't get a good seal, or you're just unsure and you need that extra assurance. You want to make sure these bolt holes are not blowing out. Because if they're blowing out, well, once again, you're probably better off starting with another block. You can fix it. I don't recommend running RTV or anything on the head bolts, because eventually it's just going to seep in and you're going to get oil in your coolant or coolant in your oil. And that's not a good situation for any of this. Once you make sure those head bolts are good and all that, you can hone your cylinders out. All you're looking for is just a nice 45-degree crosshatch, depending on how fresh the crosshatch is when you open it up. Now, in this case, you can see I actually went through and re-honed these, and I think this is a pretty good crosshatch pattern from everything I've done. So I'm pretty happy with that. There's still intolerance. Next thing we want to check, which I will walk over here actually and grab. We want to grab a feeler gauge and a straight edge. And in this case, this is a straight edge I've had laying around for a bit. It's supposed to be accurate within a thousandth of an inch. So what I do is I set my feeler gauge to 2 thousandths of an inch. And on these LS engines, the max tolerance is 4 thousandths of an inch at a flatness, which you just want to set your straight edge down. And I don't have the feeler gauges on me. I'm not going to go get them. But once you set this down, you're going to check everywhere across here. And the reason I set for 2 thousandths and all that, that's to account for the thousandths of error. And on this block, luckily enough, I couldn't even get a thousandths feeler gauge under this. There was one spot on the other side, which was so minute, it was kind of easy to get that thousandths under there, but it wasn't either. So this block's well within tolerance. It's going to seal up on the head gaskets. You're going to want to check it diagonally, both ways. Make sure you're not hitting anything. And then you're going to bring it forward to back. And you're going to slowly inch that along. Once you get there, and you know it's all good, then we can move on from this top end, which, for the moment, I'll lean that. And by the way, when you have a precision straight edge, especially one that's made out of aluminum or anything, you don't want to actually lean that against there. In this case, this will be real short. After the video, I'll hang it back up. But you want to make sure your precision straight edge is hung and it's not laying on any of the faces, because over time, it can slowly bow or warp from that. That's why most precision straight edges actually have a little hole to hang, because that hole will get the warpage, but not the actual straight edge itself. So, once we get that all established, what we're going to do, we're going to come over, and we're going to take a look at the inside. Hopefully during teardown, you took a decent look at all this. But if not, it's always a good time to double check. And what we're looking for is any heat marks, any serious issues, damage to the block. Because once again, if we're pulling a junkyard engine, we don't know the type of condition it was until after the fact. Which hopefully it goes without saying, if there's a big hole in the block, we all know it's not usable. But hey, some people will try. But not we're all in here. We want to look for heat marks, especially around these main bearing caps. Because if you see any heat, if it's a different color here, it's not that machine color, that tells us somebody really ran the main bearings way too hard. They were already gone and they kept running it till either seizure, failure, or anything else. At that point, probably going to need a line home, machine shop once again. But this block, all good. So, we're looking down here. We already got our cylinders covered. We got our head gasket bolts covered. And we checked our head gasket surface. And if that's all good, then we're going to move on to actually prepping the block more than maybe a hone job or anything else. In this case with this block, I kind of skipped ahead on a few things. I wouldn't recommend painting it at this point, but I painted it, cleaned it up for you guys. That way you weren't looking at an old greasy block. And looking in here, I already honed it, and that was just me making sure that cylinders were good. They're on a little bit higher end of the tolerance, but they're still in, and after the honing, they're still within tolerance. So, now I'm going to actually invest the time into doing a full block prep. And some of you might be wondering, well, what all does that mean? So, I will say right now, if you're doing a stock rebuild, this isn't actually fully necessary. Really isn't. So if you want to leave now, hey, be my guest. That's fine. But by the chance you might get a taste for building a more performance engine, I'm hoping to share something with you that you can take and apply to that. But I think this is all good practice for stock or a high performance build. In this case, this LQ4 is going to be more of a stock rebuild going into the trailblazer here. But hopefully, you can see it. I'll get some B footage and all that. Really get some close-ups. But I already deburred this one side inside the rail, just to kind of illustrate. And you can see, really, nothing catches my hand. I can freely do that. I come to the other side and do that same thing. You can feel that big old burr just catching. And honestly, in a stock application, are these burrs going to mean much? No. You can see the factory slams them together like this every day. They go down the line, no issues. But personally, I like to do this more for a safety conscious mind. That's one of those things, you might be sitting there torquing one of those main caps and for some reason you slip. Who knows why. But you put your hand right in that burr with all that force and skid off. Well, that red stuff inside you ain't staying inside you for long. And that is why we want to do the block prep. Because not only does this secure the block and make it more friendly to work on, but it also protects us. Now, in a high performance application, there's a couple things of why we'd want to get rid of these burrs. And even minute burrs like this can be a hazard at high horsepower. And the reason for that is stress risers. They are just a sharp edge inside of something where stress can concentrate and cause cracking and other issues. Truthfully, this oil pan rail, is that really going to be a true stress riser? I extremely doubt it. But there's a couple places inside this block, if you want to do it, whether you're building high performance or stock, you can do. In this case, because this is more of a stock rebuild, I'm not going to go that crazy. But you got casting flash in here. And this is just from when they cast it at the foundry. And this is the parting line. Which, hey, it's just part of the process. And it leaves these sharp grooves all over. And you can see them inside here. They're just kind of abundant everywhere. By the cam bore. You got a few up by the oil rail and the main caps. But if we're building this for high performance, we want to actually knock those down flat. And then if they happen to be like on an edge, like actually let's say that this main cap, where you have this sharp 90-degree turn, you want to round that over just a little bit. And you do the same thing on your main cap. And what that does is prevent stress from concentrating in that corner and cracking. Because the problem is once that crack starts, it's gonna keep going. And that's the main thing of stress risers. It's more preventative if you get rid of them. Doing anything about them after the fact doesn't help you. But let's get back to deburring the block. If you want to eliminate the casting flash, do it easy. Just get an air grinder or an electric die grinder. Get some stones, knock them down flat. And then if you're going to round them, just some flap wheels and all that. Slowly curve them. But that's only needed if you're building a high performance engine, where suddenly stress risers can become an issue. Stock application, as proven by how many vehicles there are on the road, it's not needed. But with these burrs, we're going to knock them down, and really you only need 2 tools to do that. And in this case, I got a deburring knife, which hopefully you can see that. This is just a Cobalt from Lowe's. Nothing fancy. And when you come over, do your deburr. All you're going to do, start your one edge, and you're going to just slowly pull this across. And that will slowly get rid of the edges. Generally, I like to go over the edge about 3 times. That gives you a nice deburred edge. And I will give you a pro tip. You probably see me doing this way. Something you should do, rotate the block down and let gravity assist you in getting rid of these chips. Because as you're deburring that, there are shavings coming off. So turn the block in a position where all that falls to the ground. Save yourself from getting it in here. The only reason I'm doing it like this is so the overhead camera can kind of see what I'm doing here and catch some of it. I'm not fully sure how good it's getting for footage. It seemed good, at least from the test videos. But what you can probably see in the overhead, there's a lot going down, which is okay. In this case, I still need to do a lot of cleaning in this block. It is nowhere near ready for assembly, which is okay. So all it means is I gotta be a little bit more vigilant cleaning, which, hey, I'm gonna do anyways. I wanna make sure there's no issues. So I can say this is definitely not the funnest thing when it comes to engine building, but hey, there's always something boring with the job, right? So I will say this is one of the things. Though it kind of hurts a little bit watching all this just go down in the block. But hey, I'm making sacrifices here. That way hopefully you guys can get a more clear view of what I'm doing. At least I hope you can. Because when I go to edit all this, like, not getting a good view from the overhead, whew, man, that is going to suck. But hey, sugar on the cream is, there'll probably be some good footage there, right? So as you can see here, I'm just taking my thumb and I'm just rolling it up to see if anything catches. I got a nice D-bird edge here now, which is pretty good. There's a little spot right at the end I'm gonna hit. Which now that's all good. And you're gonna want to repeat this. I'm gonna go through, we're gonna do the main caps. I don't think I'm going to do too many cuts here, so you guys might have a little bit of joy just hearing me chat, cleaning this up. Who knows? But definitely feel right around these main. Ooh, that's a really good one, right here. That's real good. But we got some pretty good burrs around these main caps. Now, obviously, they're not protruding to where the main cap goes, because that would be an issue. And one of those things, we could take our deburr knife and come scrape that off and clean it. But it's just not quite getting in the corner, which is why I also have another tool here. And what we're going to use is a file on some of this, which hopefully you can see. This is just one of the ones that you use with the old lathe from time to time. But it's a fine file. And I'm just going to come in here, kind of knock some of this off. Especially around that corner. Which, ooh, that feels so much better. But we're going to just go through, clean all these up. And I'm not too worried about bearings. So, and one thing too, you ever working on an engine and you're worried about those bearing surfaces, it's always good to have a couple old bearings lying around that ain't worth anything. Just that way you can pop them in. That way if I, for some reason, take the file or something else over there, it only screws the bearing up and doesn't actually hurt the block. this deburred, you can see, didn't take too long. I mean, I don't know truly how long it was, but felt like a short time doing all that. Now the next thing you want to come through, and this is something I already did on this, minus the main cap threads. I am waiting on the ARP thread cap, well, thread chaser. The only thing I did not chase threads on this block is the main caps. At this point, you'd want to go through, you want to chase all your threads, make sure they're nice and good, no worries. And now we're going to come back and check all these holes, which I can feel there's good burr in all these. And all we're going to do real quick, we're just going to take countersink here on the drill, just hit them, don't worry, and I will show just a quick hit like that, it's gone. And if you're worried about screwing up the threads, you got the right countersink, it won't be an issue, because you see, all I did was hit that quick and well, bam, threads are still unharmed, that thread's in nice and easy, no worries. Because remember, you're not going insane with that. You're just knocking off those burrs on the top, which, ooh, I'm actually surprised how many burrs there are in that. Now I'm starting to wonder on that. Because I don't think I've really felt a block that had burrs like this. But hey, we knocked them down. And that's a good thing. So we're just going to go through, do all of them. It only takes a quick second. You don't really have to hammer these home, guys. You don't have to hammer these home at all. All you're doing, real quick, just to knock off that sharp edge sticking up. Once again, I will stress, if you're doing this, just rotate the block on the engine stand somewhere where gravity kind of helps you get rid of those chips. I'm doing this strictly for you guys on this, and accept the fact that I'm going to have to be even more meticulous cleaning this. It ain't a big deal, but let's come through. We're going to feel, and hey, all those nasty burrs are gone outside of having shavings everywhere. Good thing she's getting cleaned again, right? Ooh. Hey, you didn't say bless you. I'm kidding, it's okay. But that's all good. So now we got everything inside the block done. We're going to kind of move on to our other holes and feel for a burr. And once again, you can see with factory wise, this isn't a huge ordeal, because obviously they get this to set the seal up fine from the factory with these, but it's kind of just a good thing to get rid of the burrs, because you never know when one might actually be an issue. One of the best things I can tell you guys, remember, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's something I've really been trying to live by anymore, because, yeah, I've just learned it's easier to prevent an issue than it is to deal with it after the fact. What we are going to do now, we're going to come in here. We're just going to take a quick feel these these oil galley holes, which that one feels okay. So, whew, that oil kind of stinks. Now I got that up out of the way. I actually never took these out yet. Ooh, stinky oil. So, yeah. Maybe there at the end of its life, somebody wasn't taking as good of care of it as they should have been, but, you know. Ooh, that one's really stuck on there. You know, sometimes things happen like that. But, I guess luckily enough, so far none of those oil galley holes really have any issue with them, which I'm okay with. Yeah, it's weird how many burrs were actually inside of everything else, and then this here's all good. Kind of makes you wonder if this one wasn't built on a Friday. Maybe a Monday. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's flip our engine back around. And what we are going to do, we are going to go to our top side. That gives us a pretty well prepped block. And it's one of those things, I really just want to stress the fact and all that. These holes, guys, make sure you blow your holes, because you do not want to hydrolock these and crack your block. You do not want that to happen. But in this case, we're not cleaning up our casting flash. We're not going to go too much farther with this, and I don't feel any burrs anywhere else that would be a concern. So I'd say our block prep 101 is done right now, right here with this. So I will catch you in the next one.